Hello, screenwriters, and welcome to Writing for Screens. Screenwriting Step by Step, Volume 28, Episode 28, Chapter 28, the 28th step of our million-step program here to write a pilot from rough idea to finished script, letting you look over my shoulder so you can watch the experience of actually grinding and marching and building a script from beginning to end in case it is helpful to you as screenwriters. My name is Glenn Gers. I am here every Monday through Friday, more or less, if I can, be at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And during that time, you can ask me almost anything by typing it into the chat. But if you are not here live, if you are watching this as a video upon YouTube channel, you are welcome to ask me questions anyway by going to writingforscreens.com and clicking on Contact Me, which is just all over the place at the bottom of almost every page. And if for some reason you don't feel like going there, you're right here. Type a comment, ask a question. That is the way to get to me. You can ask any questions you like. If I can answer it right then, I will do so at the end of each session because I like to get the writing work in at the beginning. And if it's a biggie, I might put it off and do it during one of our weekly full session Ask Me Anythings. Got some people here. Hello, Wolf Powers, and hello, Dream Phaser from Europe. Good to see you both. I am very, very glad to be working with y'all. And let's get right to it because we are in the midst of working on this new version of our scenes, getting the scenes, breaking the scenes into pieces. I started to work on that yesterday, and one of the things that brought me to was in figuring out how this group works and how they are converging on Madeline and George's house, I realized I don't know where anyone lives. I don't know who they are in this sense, and that matters because there's a logic to the fact that certain people are close to George, and therefore the meth dealer Kanji is going to volunteer to zoom over there, drive all night kind of thing. And that's what motivates Norman. So this is plot stuff. This is story reasoning. Geography is coming from the story here. George has to live within driving distance of both Norman and Kanji. And not in driving distance of people like Xena. So I realized I have to figure out where everybody lives. I'll get to that in a minute. Because that's going to take some work. You're going to watch me think right in front of you. Whoa. But in the meantime, I had also brought up the question of this whole opening sequence where Madeline is at the crime scene and Xena is trying to get the files. Doesn't make any sense if the crime scene is going to be sealed, which is just a matter of common police procedure. A crime scene, until it is safely, totally investigated and recorded, must be kept free of contamination. You can't have people wandering in and moving stuff because that changes the evidence. So they seal these places. I had originally imagined Madeline staying there. So this is a problem. And I solved it. I solved it by thinking, what if there's a second building? What if with George has like a shed or a barn or a garage, which is a separate building, and that is where he broadcasts out of. That's where all of his tchotchkes and junk is, and it appears that that's where all of his files are, and that's where he died. So therefore, the house itself might not be sealed. Is that exactly proper police procedure? I don't know. I'm making it up. Because the truth is, people make stuff up all the time in shows and movies. You try and be as accurate as you can, but when it comes down to it, the truth is we fudge reality continually in order to make stories work better. Hello, Bria Rose. Great to see you. So glad that you guys are all here. What I'm talking about is the problem of the story revolving around George's files. George's files have to be available to Madeline. Otherwise, Xena has no reason to say, give me the files. And when Madeline says no, which she would have no ability to say if the police were locking it up, then Xena would have no reason to send people down there, and the whole story wouldn't happen. So we cannot allow that to be the case. So I believe that the answer is George has a second building, a shed. And furthermore, in the house itself, George being a little nuts, he has built a hidden bunker-like basement, a trapdoor secret basement, and that's where his real files are. So I believe that that will solve it. And I am going to copy that and paste it into the outline, which will require, okay, this will require some rethinking of the stuff that's already there. So I'm going to put this in the form of a question, because I need to sort out how I describe that here and make sense of it. So, 234 Pika Pika says, this is more exciting than most shows I watch. Hi. I cannot tell you what a kick that gives me, because I was just talking to a writer friend of mine, a showrunner and writer that I respect so much, and he was saying how cool it is that you guys are actually following along, that you are actually watching this bizarre experiment in which I am doing this. So, damn, thank you. That's cool. Let's keep up all the excitement with this stuff that we're doing. So, oh, by the way, I'm just clicking around. I tend to write when I've thought of something that I think is a good idea, but I haven't definitively decided on it. It's just a note to myself. Like I said, the most important thing for me is to get comfortable with thinking on the page instead of in my head, because if it's in your head, it gets jumbled and lost. And so, hello from England, Beverly Wood. I am glad to see you, and glad that we are branching out all over the globe here with this experiment. I was just explaining a ridiculous thing that I do, but it's sort of an insight into this idea that the thing I found, the only way that I could grab hold of the writing process is to do everything I can on a page, not in my head. On a page, on an index card, on something which gets it out of my head and into a written form. And so I do this thing where I talk to myself. I say, this is a problem. It doesn't make sense. And then I answer the problem. I actually did some thinking in between those two paragraphs. But when I've got an answer that I think I'm going to use, I tend to type, because it's like, I think so. Anyway. All right. So right before this live stream began, I started working on the figure out where everyone lives, because we need to know how they are converging, and in what order they are converging depends on how close they are. So honestly, these are just moods. This is where creativity is just, this is how I feel. I feel like doing this, so that's what I'm going to do, because I am the writer and the writer gets to say. So I decided that the picture I have of George's house is sort of an East Coast woodsy, hilly, mountainous, Appalachian type of region, like West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, that area. I'm personally picturing it as in autumn, or sometime when there aren't a lot of leaves, when it's all dry branches, but not snowy. And so I just decided George's house is in some small area, some small town or outside of some town where he has a little bit of privacy, and frankly, it's cheap for him to live there. We'll get more into why that particular place, where someone is from, or where they choose to live, or where they end up living. It's always revealing of their character. It is part of defining the character. So I just said today, George is in rural Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, that sort of area there, which is within driving distance to New York. Norman has to be in a metropolitan area because we want to give him an air of sophistication, of being involved in the media, of journalism as a classy profession, which it was a few decades ago. Therefore, I'm thinking he could be from New York. He could be from Philadelphia, Philly, as they call it. I've only been there once or twice. I don't know, but I know Philadelphia is called Philly by those who live there. Is New York too impressive a market for Norman? I kind of feel like it is. I don't want Norman to have fallen from a great height. I want him to have fallen from a lower step, a middle step. So I don't think New York. He could be in, Columbus or Akron or Cincinnati or something. But for some reason, I think of him as an East Coast kind of guy. And I'm going to say Philadelphia for the moment, because it's a city in that area that makes sense to me to have him be from. It's not it's a big city, but it's not Washington, New York, one of the powerhouses of journalism. By the way, as I must say every time, if I am casting aspersions upon anyone's home state or a career or anything like that, I don't mean to be. I'm simply trying to define characters according to the cliches as I know them. You really do. Here, let's talk to you. You really are constantly working out of a vast, hopefully vast, whatever size library of cliches, of archetypes, of bits and pieces that you have scrounged up from reading and watching TV shows and movies and living whatever life you've lived. And that's what you have to work with. That's all you have to work with. You can research, of course. I could research journalism and figure out what markets I need to have him from and stuff like that. And if this was a serious project, maybe I would do it. But the truth is, I kind of think you don't want to over-research while you're creating the story. The story demands are more important than whether or not Philadelphia journalism is as powerhousey as Boston or Charlotte. I don't know. I just know that I'm trying to define characters using the material of my imaginary world. You will do the same, and it will be different. And that's why we like to read stuff. That's why I like to watch stuff, because everyone is bringing slightly different views. For those of you who are not in the USA, and the names of these cities are like blah, 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 you'll have yours. And that's what's really cool, is that if you are in Portugal or something, you're going to tell me what it's like to be in Portugal. And that's one of the reasons we watch stuff. We'll watch a sci-fi thriller or a romantic comedy, partly, of course, for the story and those feelings, but also there is a certain amount of exploring the world through stories. And so don't be afraid that your particular little world is not right. It's actually really cool. It's a selling point that you might know about Cleveland, or you might know about Lisbon, or you might know about Moscow. Anyway, Wolf says the journalists deserve their cliches. Let us here be truthful. Cliches are valuable. Cliches are cliches because they were, at least at one point, based in some perception of the truth or some perception of the world. And therefore, don't knock cliches. We all traffic in them. The question is whether or not you're conscious of them or whether you think you're spewing an unalterable truth. Don't think that you aren't. You are spewing cliches. Use them. Use them and then be aware of them and try to work with them. Question them as you go. Let's get back to work here. So, if George is in rural and George Norman, Philadelphia, let's be right. Okay. Now, what I'm probably going to do at some point is I apologize. Family matter, a text I must reply to. Okay, so now what I know is that kanji has to also be near. Kanji. Definitely going to have to change these names soon. I'm just doing a little description here so that I don't forget. Okay, so kanji, who admittedly bad name for a meth dealer, has to be within driving distance of rural Ohio and Pennsylvania. What I would do if I was not here with you guys, what I do is I would go on to Google Maps or a map app and sort of draw a driving circle and say, okay, if you're high on meth, and so therefore you can drive pretty fast overnight kind of thing, then how far away can he be? And draw a circle and figure out where he is. And then what I'm going to do is say it's also going to be someplace run down, but a small city, not rural. Although I kind of like the idea of kanji being particularly rural, which would mean that George can't be. Like I said, I'm trying to keep the characters distinct from each other. Yeah, probably like waterfront warehouse kind of feel. This is just the first. What I'm trying to do is mark out the general areas so that as you work along, you start to refine things. And this is super important, so you should know it. If you are working in the film or television industry and you make decisions like this, they're not really your decisions to make. You will not get to choose what state something is filmed in because it will be based in business decisions about tax breaks and union rules and all sorts of stuff like that. So therefore, they're going to end up going to whatever place, and that could include overseas, to film rural Pennsylvania. It's more about a mythic feeling of a place and a reference to a place than actually having to go there. Truthfully, the original, the first draft of Breaking Bad, I believe, was set in the Ohio or Pennsylvania or something like that. I remember reading about it, and when you read the first script of Breaking Bad, the pilot script, the original draft, he's driving through fields with cows, and it's all very different from the New Mexico that they ended up shooting in. New Mexico gave them a good deal. It then took the entire series in a new mental direction. Gave it its own texture and flavor, which was fabulous. But it's not like Vince Gilligan sat down and said, I'm doing a New Mexico story. He didn't. Okay. So, then this means that we want Xena to be from far away. So we're talking West Coast or Southwest, I think. She's got to take a while to get there. And Madeline, who's more important? Let's put Madeline here. Well, actually, Madeline came first, so I'm putting them in the order that they show up at George's house. Madeline, she got there pretty soon, actually. And yet, I think of Madeline as suburban corporate. Not sure where. I think East Coastish. We'll see. Although she wouldn't be suburban. She wouldn't live in a suburb by herself. Maybe she's from New York. I don't know. She's corporate. Maybe. Okay, so you guys are watching me write. I don't know if that's what you came here for, but that's what we're doing today. We are you're actually watching me fill in the blanks of a script where I have been dropping down the big picture, the big moves, and now I'm trying to think about just all those details that you need to have cooking in your brain so that when you write your scenes, the details start to form the characters and the dialogue into specifics. Okay, so for the moment, that gives us the main players. There are going to be 3 or 4 other characters who matter. But at the moment, I think we have solved them. Hello, Diego. At the moment, we have got enough of this. So I'm just going to copy this into a place where it can be used later, which I believe is the overview. Is it the overview, or am I going to? I'm going to put it in the outline. The thing I worry about when I put things into the overview is that I will forget them. The outline is the main working document. I would rather clutter the outline up as I go along, knowing that I can't leave it cluttered. Knowing that as I go through it, I'm going to be like, okay, I have to take this information and move it to the scene where it is revealed. Like this will become part of the first scene, this George description. Madeline will be part of her first scene. Norman, part of his. So I'll, when you're not watching, and you don't need to see me actually cutting and pasting and moving stuff all over the place, but that's what I'm going to do, is I'm plunking it into the outline because the outline is the most important working part of this. The notes are just where I blather, and the overview is where I sort of solidify the big picture. But when it comes to all these details, I'm building it up in the outline because that's where we're going to have to find a place for it. All right, so that's not bad. Okay, so we've done that. We have gotten a little bit of stuff determined. We know more than we did 24 minutes ago. I am now going to take a quick look at I noticed yesterday when we were talking about the big picture, the major moves, that I've got a great idea for the last part of this story, but it is currently just a big conceptual cloud. It isn't beat, beat, beat. It isn't scenes. And the most important thing you can do is make things into scenes. So what I am going to do is just look through one of my major, there we go. This is a principle I have. you just go over it and over it and over it. You're never going to get everything right at once. You are never going to, be able to get every detail locked in as you go in order. You just keep going over it, go through it again and again. And each time you do, you make it a little better in one spot or another. And after a while, the quality of the entire thing just rises, and the little bumps where things are not right, where they're not clear, or they're not decided, they become noticeable. So you have to bring them up, and you just keep bringing the whole thing up to a more and more dramatic and polished and active story. Wolf says, I wouldn't mind watching you cutting and pasting. I appreciate it, and it's you're thinking out loud when you do that. That helps. Thank you. That's interesting. The problem is when I really get into the cutting and pasting, I forget to think out loud, and you're just going to sit and watch me click, which is, there's only so much of that anyone should have to watch. All right, so we're going over it and over and over it. I'm going to go over the last part. This is of the outline. I'm on page 10 of 14. You can see that here. Well, maybe you can't. There we go. 10 of 14, which means we're in the last third, the last act. I mean, I'm not formally doing acts of this pilot because one of the things about TV pilots that people talk about and sort of then becomes solidified is this concept of the 5-act or 6-act TV pilot form, as if that's a necessity. It is only a necessity in old-fashioned broadcast network shows where they have blocks of commercials. The concept of an act in a TV show is entirely different from the concept of an act in a feature. The acts of features are thematic acts. They are beginning, middle, and end. Acts in TV shows, when people talk about them, are generally commercial break blocks. And it's useful to know, like if you are working on a network show, you do have these commercial breaks, and they determine the shape of your drama, because you got to have a cool ending when you're getting to that break. Otherwise, people will change the channel. At least that was the way it was back when people watched things live on broadcast television, and they had to watch the commercials. Now, with streaming, the truth is acts are, once again, like in features, a sort of shape. And you do not need to have a set number of them to put in the right number of commercials. It depends. Hulu, interestingly, does require act breaks in the commercial sense, or at least their shows have them. I don't know if they require them. Somewhere along the line, they put them in because they have a commercials and a commercial-free version. So if you're watching commercial-free, a show on Hulu, like Handmaid's Tale, you will notice there's these breaks every once in a while where they'll have like 2 or 3 seconds of black. That's actually the commercial break. It's a cool device. It helps to break sections up, and it gives you some suspense to build to, knowing that you're going to have a break and then come back from it. It's cool. But when I say the final act, I mean it more in the feature sense of the last section, the finale, the big ending of the episode. Having built a bunch of pieces, there's a last section, and that's what I want to look at. Xena discovers George's plan. Right. So basically, George was, in fact, had no evidence and was planning to lure the killer, to provoke the killer to come out of hiding by saying George had evidence, which was going to make the killer come after him. A dangerous plan, perhaps, but that's important for them to know. And also, let's just add a question here. How does she discover this? Did he write it down? He's a podcaster, so podcast record it. We're going to need to have that information presented, which means either we're going to have to see her see it, or we're going to have to see her see it but not see what it is, and then she reports it back. You spend a fair amount of time while you're writing coming up with how information is going to be conveyed. In other words, I have this fact I need to get through, the story fact that George has no evidence and was just trying to get the killer mad. How do we present that? It's sort of cool if you have George say it himself. If she stumbles on an unfinished episode of the podcast where he says his plan and then he never got to present that, or is she looking through his notes and goes, oh my gosh, and then we cut to her coming and saying, guys, look at this, and then she tells us what is in the notes. One way or another, we have to find out how to convey that. I'm going to take a second here to check a question from Wolf. Question, it's about screenwriting career. Does some success as a CB screenwriter depend on the nature of the advertisers? Medicine, the profession being pushed in soap operas, etc. I ask because this used to be the case in magazine article writing. That articles that contradicted something that the sponsors liked would be turned down. This is an interesting question, and the answer is basically things have changed. From the 1950s until the mid-2000s, most television was broadcast television. There was a hunk of cable. Cable did not require advertising. You paid the cable subscription fee, and that paid for the shows. So if you're watching HBO, there's no commercials. And so that removes the power of advertisers. Until the end of the 20th century, advertisers had a good deal of power. Very often they had their names on the shows. This is the GE television theater, GE General Electric. Or, Nabisco presents the Shadow. Whatever it is, you definitely had conflict with the advertisers over, like, if you have a serial killer who's poisoning people and your sponsor is a flavored fruit drink, you want them to they're going to be very adamant that the poisoner not be poisoning flavored drinks. Stuff like that. Yes, that did happen. Now, not hardly. I mean, the vast majority of writing work is not on broadcast. The number of writers who are actually writing on broadcast are small. There's a lot of shows on cable and streaming. And so those shows do not have advertising pressure. There may be corporate pressures of all sorts, but there isn't an actual, like, I'm a sponsor of this show, don't say that. I also believe that to a certain extent, you don't have direct pressure from advertisers for a TV drama anymore, partly because you usually don't know in advance who's going to be buying commercial time. It used to be different. They would sponsor a show from the get-go. Now, I believe they make the show trusting that people will advertise on it. They show the show to advertisers at a thing called the upfronts, which is every spring they have this convention where the advertisers come to, it used to be New York, and they would do a little, each network would have a day when they would do presentations to say, this is the new shows we're doing, and these are our big stars, and hey, how much do you want to advertise? But the point is, the show's already made by the time they do that. Anyway, so yeah, the answer is basically, you don't have to worry about that. So where were? Oh yeah, this is just a note. How does she discover this? Just a thought. Now we get into the meat of it. We're going to need more time dealing with this. this very, very important turning point. This is a big reveal. I'm going to write that. This is a big turning point. I'm just going to make that a little note. Major turning point. Also, how does everyone react to this news about George? For instance, Madeline would probably is pretty pissed at him because the cop was right. The cop was right. George got himself murdered. Some of the sleuths might rather admire this move. I mean, George really put his money where his mouth was. He put himself in the front line. He endangered himself, and he did apparently lure out the killer. He risked his life to lure the killer, and it worked. So for them, bravo, George, you are a hero. So that's going to lead right into the killer calling and saying, I didn't do it, which really messes up that whole thing because when the killer called. So if they're saying, George sacrificed his life, he's a hero, he lured the killer, and then the killer calls and says, I didn't do it, they're going to think, oh yeah, you got suckered, the hero caught you, and you're trying to get out of it. So the sleuths are skeptical. And that is why demand that the killer prove he is the killer to make his denial believable. Which is really, this is one of those things I'm really proud of. This is fun. The idea that you have to have a killer prove he is a killer in order to prove his innocence. I just like that. That's the sort of thing that keeps you awake when you're watching a show. So we've done about 40 minutes here. I believe I am going to stop there because I do not like these to go too long. So, y'all, it was great to see you again. I will continue next week. I believe I am going to be here Monday. And so have a great weekend and see you then. Please send any questions or comments you have through the comments page here or writingforscreens.com. And I am out of here.